Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Tuesday, 8th July 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China is implementing visa-free entry for citizens from 74 countries for up to 30 days. China expanded Bond Connect to include more mainland-based financial groups, easing capital flow restrictions. The NDRC is soliciting studies to assess the impacts of US tariffs. China's producer price index fell 3.6% in June, signaling deepening deflation. Beijing is implementing policy steps to ease price wars. Luxury home sales in Shanghai are booming. China imposed export controls on 8 companies linked to Taiwan's military. New shipbuilding orders have plunged 68% year-on-year. China has added over 4.4 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity. China's first Legoland has opened in Shanghai. Merchiai. Plans are underway for AI development in the Gobi Desert. Meta Platforms recruited Peng Rowan for its new AI research facility. The Shenzhen Bourse is urging China firms to speed up IPO applications. Turning to Taiwan, the region began its annual military exercises, coinciding with China's export controls on several companies. Meanwhile, in the United States, tariffs on Asian countries are seen as a strategy to reduce their trade with China. The U.S. has extended tariff negotiation periods with China. In Russia, with China's assistance, Moscow has tripled its drone production capabilities. Shifting to Germany, the new German Chancellor is set for their first visit to China later this year. Finally, in the United Kingdom, China's Sherry brand is set to launch with 2 new SUVs. United States markets displayed volatility reacting to President Trump's tariff proposals. The Dow Jones Industrial Average saw dips, while the Nasdaq and S&P 500 experienced fluctuation. Uncertainty among investors grew regarding the potential impact of tariffs on technology, pharmaceuticals, and other sectors, with stocks like Tesla, Palantir, and Uber showing sensitivity to tariff news. Wall Street strategists expressed caution, citing the U.S. economy's precarious footing. Trump's policies target imports like copper and pharmaceuticals, raising concerns domestically and among trading partners. Amid these tensions, the EU is seeking a swift framework agreement with the U.S. Real estate investors are increasing their share of U.S. home purchases. The U.S. is also considering sending weapons to Ukraine. The global implications of President Trump's proposed tariffs are substantial. He has threatened higher tariffs on BRICS nations, challenging US hegemony, and has sent tariff letters to 14 countries, drawing warnings from China. Discussions and market movements in countries like Japan, the UK, and Australia have been notably impacted. Australia is urgently seeking clarity regarding Trump's drug tariff threat. Australian shares are expected to decline, with BHP and Rio Tinto particularly in focus due to Trump's copper tariffs. Australia is also implementing a new mandatory merger control regime. Furthermore, one Australian state is reconsidering gas market settings to bolster supply and investment, while a childcare centre group is modifying its CCTV rollout and staffing policies. In the United Kingdom, London's stock market is concerned about AstraZeneca potentially moving its listing to the US, which could lead to a £160 billion loss. The FTSE 100 reached a 3-week high as investors monitor US trade talks, closing higher following the release of the latest US tariff rates. Oil prices have stabilized as traders assess US tariffs and Red Sea attacks. Industry reports indicate a rise in US stockpiles. Copper prices have reached a record high due to Trump's proposed copper tariffs. Gold rates have decreased in the domestic futures market due to a stable dollar and rising US bond yields. Russia's Kremlin stated that clarifying what weapons the US will send to Ukraine will take time, following remarks by Trump. A US senator described comments by Medvedev as a sign that Russia is not interested in peace. China's Shine has filed for an IPO in Hong Kong following setbacks in US and UK listings. China has issued warnings regarding Trump's latest tariff moves. Despite limited progress, numerous nations are eager to join the China-backed initiative. Gulf states' major bosses are subdued amidst uncertainty surrounding US tariffs. South Africa faces significant risks as US tariffs will have a severe impact, necessitating urgent exploration of alternative strategies. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, unexpectedly maintained its policy rate, awaiting further inflation data to confirm inflation remains on track to reach 2.5% sustainably. India's stock market is showing mixed performance, with Belrez Industries hitting a record high after a Jefferies buy call. Yet gift Nifty trends suggest a potentially negative market. Open. Financials are currently leading Indian equity benchmarks higher, though gains are capped by tariff concerns. The BSE is commemorating its 150th anniversary, reflecting the Indian stock market's global influence. Significant financial activities are taking place across India. HSBC Prudential is filing for a $1.20 billion IPO. Jio BlackRock is preparing to enter India's funds sector, the low-cost approach. Nexus Venture Partners units are selling a stake in India Shelter Finance for 425 crore. The NSDL IPO is nearing its SEBI listing deadline. Municipal bonds are increasingly seen as an investment in urban India. NEX is introducing India's first electricity futures contract. In contrast, Indian retail traders have collectively incurred $12 billion in losses trading equity options. A legal dispute has arisen between the Indian government and Elon Musk's X over censorship issues. X claims the government mandated the blocking of over 2,000 accounts. Jane Street, a US-based firm, is challenging a ban in India, defending its trading activity and criticizing the regulator for what it claims is basic arbitrage. Ventive Hospitality and Marriott International are expanding their footprint in South Asia, introducing 1548 new rooms across India and Sri Lanka. In the United States, former President Trump's tariff threats are contributing to market jitters in India and influencing stock benchmark performance. He also mentioned that a deal with India is nearing completion. Jane Street, the firm involved in a dispute with Indian regulators, is based in the U.S. Ventive Hospitality and Marriott International are expanding their presence in South Asia, introducing 1548 new rooms across India and Sri Lanka. Japan expressed regret over President Trump's 25% tariff on its goods and those from South Korea, as well as new taxes on 12 other nations, setting a deadline of August 1. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba convened with cabinet ministers to strategize, with Japan aiming to secure concessions on auto tariffs during trade discussions with the U.S. The service sector in Japan experienced improved sentiment as summer's impact somewhat mitigated concerns over the U.S. tariff. Japan's stock market showed resilience, with the Nikkei 225 index rising 0.36% on multiple occasions and initially climbing by 0.33%, while the Topix index increased slightly by 0.7%. However, declines in chip-related stocks tempered early gains on the Nikkei stock average. Remix Point, a company listed in Japan, stated it would compensate its CEO in Bitcoin to align interests with shareholders. Iwakaze Capital is adopting a people-focused, trust-based, and actively involved strategy to thrive within Japan's mid-market private equity landscape. Russia is experiencing a surge in its citizens, transferring funds to foreign brokers, setting a new record. To facilitate international payments, Russian companies are increasingly using netting, gold, and cryptocurrency. President Putin received this information from a financial watchdog. The Russian central bank is contemplating a significant interest rate reduction, potentially exceeding 1 percentage point in July. However, the nation's budget deficit has expanded dramatically, reportedly increasing sixfold compared to the previous year. In a lighter note, over 200 couples in Moscow participated in a mass wedding ceremony to commemorate Family Day. In other developments, Russian air defenses reportedly intercepted 4 drones targeting Moscow. Adding to a series of concerning events, a former Russian transport minister was discovered deceased in his vehicle, apparently from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Sources suggest he was under investigation for embezzlement prior to his death, shortly after being fired by Putin. In another incident, a high-ranking Russian oil executive died after falling from a window in Moscow. A campaign manager associated with Nadezhdin had his Russian citizenship revoked. Yale University has been officially designated as an undesirable organization within Russia. In a policy shift, President Putin authorized foreigners to enlist in the Russian army during periods of mobilization. International relations continue to be strained. Donald Trump expressed his dissatisfaction with Putin, accusing him of bulls, and announced the resumption of U.S. weapons shipments to Ukraine. The U.S. Senate is anticipated to hold a vote on new sanctions against Russia in the near future. According to Senator Graham, the European Union is formulating what the French foreign minister describes as the most stringent sanctions against Russia since 2022, with the aim of disrupting circumvention tactics. North Korea has reportedly tripled its military presence to bolster Russia's war efforts, which some analysts interpret as a sign of Moscow's vulnerability. Furthermore, there are allegations of unconventional intelligence activities involving Russia's utilization of its churches located in foreign countries. South Korea is navigating a challenging economic climate marked by sluggish domestic demand and persistent tariff anxieties, with imports to the U.S. facing a 25% tariff. In response, South Korea is escalating trade negotiations with the U.S., sending officials to Washington ahead of the August 1st deadline. The White House has publicly acknowledged these efforts. Domestically, South Korea is clamping down on financial misconduct, implementing a one-strikeout policy for stock fraud, and penalizing major shareholders for accounting irregularity. The nation is also managing a surge in spending vouchers, handled by card companies amounting to $9.50 billion. Rising household loans are adding complexity to the economic picture, potentially impacting interest rate reduction strategies. In the corporate sphere, Ing has appointed Yoon Hae-yeon as its Korea manager. Google Cloud is expanding its sovereign cloud infrastructure to boost data processing capabilities within the country. Health Foods Inc. and Novo Nordisk Pharma Korea Limited have introduced Smart Cap Malia integration for FlexTouch insulin pens, furthering digital advancements in diabetes management. XRP has risen to prominence as the leading cryptocurrency in South Korea on the Upbit exchange, surpassing Bitcoin and Ethereum. A 36-year-old beauty entrepreneur has recently become South Korea's newest billionaire. Japan also faces tariff concerns, with imports to the U.S. potentially subject to a 25% tariff. Georgia is closely monitoring the tariff threats directed at South Korea and Japan, both key trading partners for the state. Southeast Asian foreign ministers met as Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim warned against the weaponization of global trade amidst growing concerns about U.S. The United States, under President Donald Trump, announced 25% tariffs on Japan and South Korea. effective August 1st, citing insufficient purchases of U.S. rice and cars by Japan. Asian equities demonstrated resilience, navigating the tariff turbulence, with the tech and materials sectors leading the gains, despite fluctuations in U.S. futures. Turning to India, the Sensex rose by 270 points, driven by late-session buying in banking stocks and buoyed by gains in broader Asian markets. Jefferies highlighted Varun Beverages, Hindustan Unilever, and Asian Paints as top consumer stock picks, noting their limited downside potential. These stocks, along with Aditya Birla Lifestyle, Brands, and Aurobindo Pharma, are reportedly active on dealers' desk. Meanwhile, investors are also considering Asian dividend stocks for portfolio diversification. In financial news from the Middle East, First Abu Dhabi Bank issued the region's first digital bond, marking a significant step in the adoption of digital finance. European equities have led global gains in 2025, with Greece, Poland, Czech Republic, and Spain showing strong performance. Despite this, European markets are navigating tariff uncertainties, particularly those linked to potential U.S. trade policies under the Trump administration. These uncertainties have occasionally dampened market sentiment and IPO activity. Second quarter corporate profits are expected to dip slightly by 0.2%. Investor confidence has remained fairly steady, with markets mostly overlooking immediate tariff threats as they await updates on U.S. trade talks. The energy, healthcare, tech, and banking sectors have all provided boosts to European shares at different times. Euronext is expanding its European repo clearing operations. Several European companies, including GPI Investments, are expanding into the Australian market. Meanwhile, tensions between Europe and China are increasing before an important upcoming summit. United Kingdom. Former UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is returning to Goldman Sachs as a senior advisor. The Confederation of British Industry, CBI, has voiced serious concerns about the decline of the London Stock Exchange, LSE. The CBI warns that UK markets risk becoming irrelevant and calls for immediate action to stop companies from leaving the UK. Simultaneously, China's confidentially filed for an IPO in Hong Kong, seeking faster approval after its London listing stalled. Rising UK shipping costs are posing a threat of renewed price increases. A major UK airport has removed the restriction on liquids exceeding 100 ml. UK shares showed little movement as investors analyzed recent tariff changes and corporate announcements. Reports indicate that the US economy has surpassed the UK's in growth over the last 17 years. Stamp duty is identified as a deterrent to investment in the UK. Mark Jennings emphasizes the UK, along with France and Italy, as crucial markets for Gemini in 2025. French President Macron is advocating for the UK to formally recognize Palestine, Ukraine, and Russia. Aerial attacks persist between Moscow and Kyiv. Ukrainian President Zelensky has formalized agreements intended to increase domestic drone manufacturing. A minister serving under Putin has reportedly died following setbacks in Ukraine. The Swiss Pfiffner Group is providing donations to Ukraine and is considering investing in a manufacturing facility there. Others. Amundi Physical Metals has issued 45,000 gold, etc. securities, expanding its offerings in the precious metals market. Saudi Arabia is witnessing a surge in economic activity, marked by trading in US stocks reaching a record 44 billion, nearly tripling year on year. The Saudi main index closed slightly lower at 11,294. Reflecting a 0.45% decrease, while Saudi stocks mirrored this trend at the close of trade. SAP Invest is poised to raise $266 million to support small Saudi businesses. The Saudi chocolate industry is expanding, with Riyadh leading in manufacturing registrations, indicating growth in the consumer sector. Demand for commercial real estate is soaring, leading to a Riyadh-themed Monopoly edition. Ladoun has signed a contract for a mixed-use project, contributing to the country's development landscape. Saudi banks are poised for a strong second quarter due to increased lending activity. The Saudi CMA has approved a regulatory framework for the offering of SDRs. Kuka, a Saudi-based company, has secured $15 million from RIA Partners. The Public Investment Fund, PIF, is investing in a New York City property near Central Park. Saudi Arabia is aiming to power 7% of global AI and is partnering with Kuwait to advance governance and innovation through artificial intelligence. An environment fund has signed research agreements with Saudi research institutions to promote environmental innovation. The country has secured $1.30 billion to boost development and private sector growth. A customs operation uncovered $653.9 million in illicit funds from passengers bound for Saudi Arabia. The organizer of the Saudi Future Investment Initiative, FED conference, Retaliate, is planning to IPO his firm. Huawei fintech company Husby is expanding into Saudi Arabia after securing $59 in funding. South Africa is grappling with economic headwinds as Investec's report reveals its citizens are experiencing a decline in wealth relative to the global average, primarily due to sluggish economic growth. The South African rand saw fluctuations, initially finding support from optimism surrounding potential trade discussions with the United States. However, the currency weakened after former U.S. President Trump suggested imposing a 30% tariff on BRICS-aligned nations. South Africa disputes the accuracy of the trade data underlying this threat. Moreover, South Africa's government emphasizes a cautious and well-considered approach to adjusting the inflation target. The nation's property market is also undergoing a period of notable transformation. Thailand is seeing its real estate market cater to diverse demographics, exemplified by Xiao Chun-chen, a 39-year-old resident of Chiang Mai, who spends roughly $460 monthly for a luxury condominium rental. Shifting focus to Hong Kong, the region's robust financial infrastructure continues to fuel its AI development despite rising geopolitical challenges. The city is actively boosting computing power to support companies in this rapidly evolving technological field. Canada's NPTX Composite experienced a downturn, closing 0.43% lower. Simultaneously, investment within Canada's technology and AI sectors is surging, creating opportunities for substantial growth in select DebtX stock. Adding to the economic landscape, Nissan has temporarily suspended production of 3 models intended for the Canadian market at its manufacturing facilities in the United States. Turning to Japan, the USD-JPY exchange rate is climbing, fueled by rising tariff pressures and the contrasting monetary policies of central banks. Switzerland's SIX Group demonstrated robust results in June. Its stable credit rating remains unchanged. In other news, a recent study reveals that 40% of Switzerland's population has a migrant background, reflecting the country's diverse demographic makeup. Hungary faces continued scrutiny from the EU regarding its commitment to democratic norms. The EU's Justice Chief highlighted a lack of substantial progress in addressing concerns about democratic backsliding. This assessment underscores ongoing tensions between Hungary and the European Union over issues related to the rule of law and fundamental rights. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government is facing increasing pressure to address rising inflation. The Bank of Canada has implemented several interest rate hikes in an attempt to curb rising prices, but the effects are yet to be fully realized. Critics argue that additional fiscal measures are needed to provide relief to struggling families and businesses. In the latest from Australia, the government is grappling with a severe housing crisis. Low interest rates and a surge in demand have driven up property prices, making home ownership increasingly unaffordable for many Australians. The government is exploring various policy options, including increasing housing supply and tightening lending standards. Meanwhile, in Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is working to rebuild international relationships. He aims to restore Brazil's role as a key player in global affairs. Lula is prioritizing environmental protection and sustainable development. Pakistan is seeing positive economic movement as its best-funded startup approaches profitability after a fintech agreement. Furthermore, Pakistan has pre-qualified 4 investors for the privatization of Pakistan International Airlines, PEA, and has given the green light to a joint venture deal concerning the Roosevelt Hotel. Germany is taking a firm stance, cautioning that the European Union is ready to respond with retaliatory measures should a trade war erupt with the United States. Meanwhile, in Mexico, Jorge H. Martinez, who owns Micropods in Monterrey, is witnessing a business boom, a direct result of us tariffs placed on his Chinese rival. Hospital operator I is contemplating an expansion of its services into both Indonesia and Vietnam. In Indonesia, Chandra Dia's stock experienced a significant surge of 35% after a $146 million IPO. Taiwan's Cathay Venture participated in the final closing of Cypral's €130 million series, a funding round, joining the IC Fund and France 2030 in supporting the European processor company. Vietnam is poised to benefit from increased foreign investment, largely due to a beneficial tariff arrangement. Qatar's international reserves have seen growth, increasing by 3.5% in June to surpass $70 billion, indicating a strengthening financial position. Malaysia's Anwar is planning discussions with us Senator Rubio regarding the impact and implications of us tariffs. Israel's strategic location and market presence in the Middle East are currently viewed as unmatched. Bank Sohar in Oman is set to provide financial backing for various economic zone projects throughout the country. In the United Kingdom, the chair of M&S disclosed that the company has experienced 2 major hacking incidents that were never publicly reported. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.